I think that I'm probably wondering the same question that everyone is wondering in the Jewish world today. And that is, as we approach this Simchat Torah, is there really Simcha? 1 year ago on Simchat Torah, the worst tragedy and worst tragic, catastrophic circumstance befall the Jewish people since the creation and the inception of Medinat Yisrael, of the State of Israel. October 7th, Simchat Torah. How do we have Simchat Torah? How do we have Simcha, happiness, with the Torah this year? Reflecting at the same time on what happened last year. Very, very difficult to understand, comprehend, and to deal with. On a personal note, it's something that I deal with consistently. On a personal note, the loss of life, the loss of my daughter, worst possible catastrophe that could happen to someone in their own personal lives is the loss of a child. Lo aleichem, no one should ever know. But one of the things that I consistently struggle with is when there is simcha, when there is happiness. We have 2 children who got married since Gila died. And you would reach the ultimate sea of happiness. And yet, even within that happiness, there is always a feeling of guilt, a feeling of necessity, whereby I'd like to be happy, I'd like to enjoy, but at the same time I know that there's loss looming over me, and that will consistently remind me that I should not and cannot experience happiness in its ultimate state. So what does one do? How does one find the ability, the capacity to somehow celebrate, to somehow find that source of simcha, Simchat Torah, even if that simcha comes from celebrating the book of the Torah, the completion, and yet the continuity and the reconvening of the reading of the Torah once again? How do we find this happiness? And I saw an interesting point which I think resonates with me, and I think will resonate with you as well. And it's something that I consistently tell myself on a personal level, and I think certainly it's something that we could incorporate on a national one. In the Parsha of V'zot HaBracha, the last Parsha, the last portion of the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu offers brachot, blessings, to every single one of the Shiftei Yisrael, of the tribes of Israel. And to the tribe of Reuven, the Bechor, the eldest of all of the tribes, he says, Yechi Reuven ve'al yamot. You, Reuven, should live, ve'al yamot. You should never experience death. Well, what does that mean? It's superfluous. It's the same thing. If someone is living, obviously they are not experiencing death. And the answer is like this. I saw a tremendous insight by Rav Mati Greenberg, who was the Rosh Yeshiva of Kerem B'Yavne. And he says, very short, sweet, poignant, and to the point. Yesh chayim shel choser ma'as. There are people who live without purpose, without actions, without ideology, without an extensive reason that has proven itself through their life, by the way they live, by the morals and values that they extol and that they represent. Ve'abaracha, the blessing here, lo dai shelo yamut. It's not enough that you're not going to die, ela sheyichyeh. How are you going to actually live your life? So it's not sufficient that a person's not dead, but the question is, how does he live? And that is the question that we have to remind ourselves of, I believe, on this Simchat Torah. I understand that Gila died, but the question is, how do I take that death and decide that I'm going to live with that death? How do I extol and how do I accentuate and how do I elevate my life so that in some sense that death, al yamot, will make purpose, will make sense, if you may, in as much as is possible. And while I struggle with it every day, I also struggle with the asking of myself, make purpose of your life, because there is death around and death is inevitable, but we can live for the sense of making purpose out of what ultimately can also be a tragedy, a catastrophic loss or death. This Simchat Torah, there is simcha. What is that simcha? the very fact that we're alive, the very fact that we are still presented with the opportunity to make sense out of al yamot. It's not enough that we're not dead. Yechir uven, make a chayim, make a life with purpose, a life with focus, a life with an altruistic movement by which we are trying to really extend ourselves, and by which we are trying to reach for that greater purpose, for that greater revelation in this world, to help others, to help ourselves, and to further anticipate and to further facilitate the survival of our nation as individuals and as a nation at large, and certainly of our country of Israel. Chag sameach.